Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. As a reminder, please note that board meetings are being recorded for the convenience of those unable to attend this video conference. The recording and closed captioning will be posted to the BERS YouTube channel following the meeting. Alex, would you please call the roll?
Dr. Vasti Acosta?
I'm here.
Thank you. Tom Allen? Tazeen Azad?
Present.
Thank you. Russell Buckley?
For the Chancellor and CFO Lindsay Oates, I am present.
Thank you. Janelle Chacon? Deborah Dillingham? Gregory Faulkner?
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Angela Green? I see you in the participants list, but if you are speaking, I can't hear you. Angela Green? Kyle Kimball?
Here.
Thank you. Anthony Lopez?
Present.
Thank you. John Maderick?
Present.
Thank you. Donald Nesbitt? Alan Ong?
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Kalira Salas Ramirez? Thomas Shepard?
Present.
Thank you. Karina Taveras? Gladys Ward?
Present.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Alex. And I just saw in the chat that Donald is in the waiting room. If someone could let him in. Someone let Donald in.
I can't see the waiting room. Karen, are you able to do this?
Yeah, I'm trying to go in and let him in. Hold on, just 1 second. I'm sorry, I'm trying, but I'm not able to, unless, let me reach out to Donald, have him log out and try to go back in, okay?
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, I'm in. Sorry, Angela Green is here. I couldn't
Okay.
unmute myself, but I'm here. Please put me. Please put
Thank
me
you.
on.
No,
Thanks, Angela.
thank you very much.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Technology.
I'm just going to give it another minute to wait for Donald to join us.
Hey, Donald joined the wrong meeting. He's in executive meeting. That's why I didn't receive a notification that he's in the lobby. So I just left a message for him to exit out of the executive committee meeting invite and to join in on the board meeting. So let me try to reach him at another method.
Resend him the link, Karen. You want me to do that?
Yeah, no, I'll send it to him right now.
Okay.
Okay, the recording has resumed.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Noting for the record that we have a quorum to conduct business. The first order of business is calendar item number 1, noting the minutes of the meeting of the Board of Education Retirement System held on May 26th, 2022. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved, Tom Shepard.
Tony Lopez, second.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tony. When I call out in favor, if you wish to vote in favor of the resolution, please unmute yourself and respond in favor. Similarly, if you wish to oppose or abstain from a particular vote, please unmute yourself and respond accordingly when I call out any opposed or any abstentions. And please state your name after the voice vote for clarity of the record. Any discussion on calendar item number 1, noting of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes for the May 26th, 2022 board meeting, please respond in favor. Aye. Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Hi, Gladys Ward.
Hi, Angela.
Aye, Kyle Kimball.
Hi, Vasti.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the executive director's update. Sandy, would you like to share any remarks with us?
Yes, I'd like to start by thanking Mr. Michael Wright of Siegel Marco. Trustees here don't have the tenure that Mr. Wright has. He is unwilling to commit to the exact number, but I believe it's over 25 years. His steady hand has guided the investment program for BERS. During the last 25 years, and this is actually kind of an amazing statistic. It comes from the RFP process we went through a little over 2 years ago, that for the most recent periods, our investment performance was hundreds of basis points better than our comparable systems in New York City. And that for 25 years, we had a 50 basis point compounded advantage. And while I would love to take credit for that, Mr. Wright was the only person present who could do that. I want to thank Mr. Wright for his years of dedicated service to the Board of Ed Retirement System, our members and our staff, and to the taxpayers of New York City, for which he saved hundreds of millions of dollars. And Mr. Wright, I don't know if you wanted to offer us any final pearls of wisdom, but you know, the floor is yours for a few minutes.
Well, just to say, I certainly appreciated working with BERS, and I think the team that you have now is as good as any I've worked with over those last 27 years. So I feel like the system is in good shape. And as a taxpayer of New York up until most recently, I also appreciate that we saved the taxpayers some money. So bottom line, BERS is a great institution, benefits from having had a lot of good people work on it, especially the trustees that went along with the recommendations. So thank you very much.
Right, Mr. Wright, we expect to see you regularly in our office when you're a retired gentleman.
Sure.
Okay. So just not quickly, but from me, tonight we'll be seeking a vote on the administrative budget for fiscal 2023. Last month, we presented a budget which included a 4% compensation increase across the agency. We are prepared to offer a second version of the fiscal 2023 budget without this increase. I wanted to preview this conversation with Daniel and Chitra by acknowledging that the 4% compensation increase may be unique across the other New York City agencies and departments. We propose this compensation increase to support our ability to keep experienced staff at BERS. In a recent McKinsey analysis of the Great Resignation, they identified the most impactful way that individuals can propel their earnings higher. It is by taking a new job. This fact, along with the tight employment market and growing impact of inflation, create both an opportunity and incentive for the Great Resignation to continue, if not get worse. We saw the 4% increase as a defensive maneuver to fight staff departures. To wit, in fiscal 2021, we had 2 staff departures. In fiscal year 2022, to date, we have had 25 departures. We have been hiring aggressively and reduced open head count from 16 in July on July 1st, 2021 to 12 vacancies currently. We are pedaling hard and basically making very little progress. Most recently and anecdotally, we lost 2 staff members. Our CISO candidate left after 1 day following a process that took over a year, involved 3 postings and 2 particular individuals who were offered this job. She lasted 4 hours. A new accountant left after a month, putting us in competition for her services with another New York City agency. She departed or will depart in 2 days for that other opportunity with a significant increase in compensation. This is going to be a challenge for us for a number of years, in my opinion. Now, some other items of business. In response to the possibility of structural change in the Panel for Education policy and the risk of discontinuity of governance and decision-making at the board level, we are proposing changes in the authorities related to contract approvals. The intention of these changes is to protect the agency from an inability to approve contracts important to continued operations. We did have a couple of these problems this year, in fact. The risk of discontinuity of governance and decision-making is also being addressed by a resolution to amend the authority and procedures of the Executive Committee to permit that committee to exercise certain shareholder rights and approve contracts below a certain threshold. This amendment also insulates against the hazard of failure to meet quorum by providing that the powers of the Executive Committee will not expire until the board can reconvene and vote on whether to extend or rescind these powers. We will be proposing resolutions that appoint an alternate member of the Audit Committee. Please consider volunteering. The Audit Committee has significant impact on our agency's desire for continued improvement and can be a fun meeting to attend. We will be proposing resolutions that appoint an alternate. Oh, I've already talked about that. There will be 2 resolutions relating to contract amendments with temporary staffing agencies. These resolutions extend our existing temp contracts for 3 months until new contracts with the vendors selected through a finished RFP process can be finalized and all temp staff can be transitioned to the new vendor. This process will also need to accommodate recently adopted changes in the security protocols of the Department of Education, which has third-party contracted out those protocols. Investment Strategy is proposing a resolution to enter an agreement with KPX Global, which I want to highlight. This agreement would drive the development of the BERS Private Market ESG Pilot Project. This innovative project will support the aligning of our actions with our intentions in the BERS private markets asset allocations. Finally, there are 3 educational opportunities I would like to recommend to trustees. The Coried Global Summit is scheduled for July 20th to 22nd. We have a long history of participating in this conference. This is a smaller conference that allows for education around fiduciary duties and investment decision-making, as well as an opportunity to meet with other public plan trustees. Karen can help organize your attendance if you're interested. Also, the National Conference on Teacher Retirement Annual Trustee Workshop, July 24th through 27th. NCTR provides a very strong curriculum in this program and a large turnout of teacher pension system trustees. Finally, Professional Pensions is offering a half-day virtual conference called Pension 360, focused on fiduciary decision-making. This virtual conference is scheduled for the morning of September 20th. I will send around an email with more information, and this email will have a registration link, and we can help with any assistance you need on that. I will be sending out emails on all 3 of these opportunities, and if you have any interest in attending them, I would encourage you to do so. And that's it for me, Russ.
Thank you, Sandy. I want to offer my congratulations to Mr. Wright as well on celebrating 25 years. It's been a pleasure working with you during the 3 years that I've been on this board, and you've always been a wealth of insight, and your performance that you have, the BERS's performance that you have aided and abetted in speaks for itself. So a thank you from myself as well. The next items Absolutely. The next items on this afternoon's agenda are calendar items number 2 through 17, the ordinary business of BERS. May I have a motion to consider calendar items numbers 2 through 17.
So moved. Tony.
Thank you, Tony. May I have a second?
Seconded, Gladys Ward.
Thank you, Gladys. Alex, would you please tell us about the ordinary business of BERS?
Of course, these are all the retirements, refunds, and death benefits that have been processed since the last meeting of this board.
Thank you, Alex. We will now vote on these items. All those in favor of approving calendar items numbers 2 through 17, please indicate your approval now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Aye,
Hi,
Tony.
Alan.
Shepard.
Hi,
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 John.
Angela.
Hi, Gladys Ward. Hi, Basti Acosta.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is calendar item number 18, authorization for the adoption of an administrative budget for fiscal year 2023 for the Board of Education Retirement System. I would prefer to have some additional time to consider calendar item number 18. May I please have a motion to table calendar item number 18?
So moved, Greg Faulkner.
Thank you, Greg. May I have a second?
Second, Alan O.
Seconded, Angela Green.
Thank you. I heard I'm going to go with Dr. Angela Green there. Thank you. Any discussion on tabling the calendar item number 18? We can take it up at our July board meeting.
Yeah, this is Tom. Point of order. That's not a debatable motion. Why do we always do this? Because the rules, Robert's rules state that the motion to table is not debatable.
Sorry, it wasn't appropriate for me to open up the item for discussion. Is that accurate, Alex?
I don't have the answer off the top of my head. I don't know whether the law department is aware of this.
If we're operating under Robert's rules of order, Robert's rules state that it's not debatable. I'm just
Can I offer a comment which may facilitate
go to a vote.
this motion? Russ? So
Listening.
So that everyone understands what happens if the budget is tabled and is not passed for fiscal 2023. On July 1st, the fiscal 2022 budget is automatically loaded and we will continue to have budgeted money to spend. So there is no risk that not ruling on this budget is a problem for the operations of BERS.
Thank you for that context, Sandy. Alex, should we make a roll call to table the budget?
Certainly can, yes. It will require a vote to table. So
Excellent. Let's move to a roll call vote to table the budget then. If you wouldn't mind facilitating that, Alex,
certainly,
that would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. Dr. Vasti Acosta,
Approve.
Tazeen Azad,
Approve.
Russell Buckley,
Approve tabling.
Gregory Faulkner,
Yes on the motion to table.
Dr. Angela Green,
Approved on the motion to table.
Kyle Kimball. Kyle Kimball,
Approved.
thank you. And Anthony Lopez,
Approved to table.
thank you. John Maderick,
I vote nay to table.
thank you. Donald Nesbitt,
Nay to table.
thank you. Alan Ong,
Yes, to table, sorry.
thank you. Thomas Shepard,
I oppose tabling.
thank you. Gladys Ward,
Approved.
thank you.
Alex, could you report out on the results of the vote?
This is 9 votes in favor and 3 opposed. The motion would pass.
And it passed without the vote of a member trustee, Alex?
I don't believe that, well,
It is a unique feature of our rules and regulations that As far as I know, no resolution can pass without the affirmative vote of one member trustee.
This was a procedural motion. I don't think this was a resolution.
I'm not sure that the rules don't address that directly. I'm not sure. Darren, do you have any thoughts about this?
Alex,
Ostensibly, sorry, go ahead, please.
are you saying, Alex, are you saying this is not addressed in the rules? This is
Okay.
Marta.
Hi, Marta. Hi, how are you? What the rules say is that no act of the board can go forward without the vote of at least one employee member of the board. The question is whether a motion to table qualifies for the provision. In other words, whether a motion to table an item is considered an act of the board for this purpose.
Right. If you're saying if there's a distinction between a substantive vote, act versus a procedural act.
Exactly.
I mean, an act is an act, is it not? An act by the board, action by the board, by,
I think by default I would think so, Marta.
right.
But I wanted to hear your opinion on this.
That's my inclination, absent some sort of historical, background on how this has transpired before the BERS board.
If I may, ostensibly, with a 9-3 vote, the motion to table has passed numerically, but not statutorily. Ostensibly as well, if we were to do a similar vote to consider the motion, it would also fail statistically. I don't want to, we have
Right.
plenty of business to discuss over the course of today's meeting. I don't want to spend the next 90 minutes on tabling or not tabling the discussion. I would prefer to just move to the next item on the agenda if that suits all the parties involved.
Does not.
John or Donald?
My nay staying.
Could we move this
I-
item to the end of the agenda and deal with the rest of the agenda? And then
No.
maybe some more research can be done in the meantime to get clarity?
I just want to say this. I don't want to set precedent for the veto power of the employee trustees to be overlooked. And it seems like that's what's actually happening here, where we're overlooked. History, there's no precedent to bypass two employee trustees who vote no.
The majority of the board has also voted no, though.
No, I get what you're saying, but this has came to the board before, and this is not the first time that we have voted no, and we move forward with the vote. I mean, with the process. To overlook it and say that, oh, this would happen, so we're not going to consider it, and we need to move on, would overshadow John and I and my position as an employee trustee. I don't want to set precedent for that to happen on anything that we consider here. Especially since John and I, it is a majority of our members who are actually affected by any decision that is made at this board.
Concur.
So traditionally we do a motion and a second, yes? That's sort of the mechanics of how items are brought to the table for discussion. Obviously, in this case, we did a roll call vote on, instead of considering a motion, tabling a motion. Is it appropriate to do a roll call vote to consider the motion?
Russ, I think if I understand correctly, you're suggesting that the board proceed to vote on the budget right now without discussion, right?
I was suggesting that the board move to vote to consider,
Right.
not to vote on the budget itself,
Okay.
to even consider the agenda item. I will reiterate my
Go
previous
ahead.
statement, which is that I would prefer to have additional time to consider calendar number 18.
But let me say this also, if there was a vote on the board to table and the vote didn't pass, then it automatically has to be discussed.
Is that accurate?
But
Alex?
was there clarity on whether the vote actually failed? Because there's a question of whether the procedural tabling of the motion is allowed.
I think we have an answer from the law department, though.
Okay.
So I think that Russ, I think that Don is correct then.
Is that accurate, Marta, law department?
Yes.
So that by the failure on the 9-3 margin with the 2 employee members voting in the dissent, the motion to table the agenda item fails, and we are now in the process of considering the agenda item?
Correct, that because there was no act of the board. There wasn't a majority act by the board.
So then we are now officially considering?
Correct.
Okay. I would like to move to a vote on calendar item number 18, authorization for the adoption of the administrative budget for fiscal year 2023 for the Board of Education retirement system.
There's no discussion on the budget?
I would prefer to have some additional time to consider it.
But Russ, we've already voted that down.
Marta, is it correct that with the motion to table being defeated, discussion is required at this point? I'm not sure what the parameters are of that requirement.
I don't know that a discussion is required if someone is not ready to have a discussion.
But if
I'm hearing that Russell was not prepared to discuss.
That's correct.
Was the motion to consider the original item seconded? I think as soon as it was brought up, I moved to table. I don't know if the original motion was item 18 was actually seconded.
there was no original motion and we went straight into a motion to table.
I think actually that was probably improper. I don't think it should have been moved to table without moving to consider first.
I'll move to consider item number 18. This is Tom Shepard.
I'll second it, John.
All right, we have a motion from Tom, a second from John. As I've previously stated, I would prefer to have some additional time to consider calendar item number 18. I don't feel prepared to have a productive discussion on this matter at this time. As Sandy has previously stated, the prior year budget will go into effect, so there is no risk to BERS operational continuity by the board considering this calendar item at the July board meeting. At this point, I will ask for any other comments or questions from the Board of Trustees this time before moving to a vote.
This is Angela Green, and I agree. I want to get more information, so I will vote in that way so that we can get more information before I vote on this item. Thank you.
So I do have further comments on that. In reference to what was just said, the information that we get is provided by the BERS staff on a budget, but we never got to get to that portion of it because we moved to table it first. Traditionally, at the board, the the budget is always passed in June because the fiscal year ends on June 30th. And this is the way we've always done it. This is also what was discussed at last month's meeting. And I want to say and caution folks that when we're here and we actually saying that we're going to do something, let's stick to doing it. That was a part of the entire discussion in May. And yet we get here in June and say that we're not prepared to have the discussion that we said we needed a month to look over last month. Daniel and Chitra went through their portion at last month's meeting. We all agreed that it would be in June. So it's just puzzling to me that we get at the June meeting that we agreed to discuss the budget and we're not discussing the budget. No one is prepared when the staff is the one that actually gives us the information on the budget. It's just puzzling to me. I like to stick to what we're saying we're going to do as a board. And this just um, for me, I just feel some kind of way because there may be other votes that may affect the members that I serve financially and hit their pockets. And we say that we're going to do it. And then the next month, where there may be time constraints on why we need to do it, we don't do it. Last year, we didn't make a quorum. Some people didn't hold to their obligation. It cost my members 20 something million in fees. I serve some of the lowest paid vulnerable people in society who are our city workers and also who are folks in our community, our moms, our aunties, our grandmas who work and service our children. And so to say that we're going to do something in May and then say that we're going to do something in May at the June meeting and then no one is prepared is just puzzling to me.
Donald, I can appreciate the impassioned words that you just imparted upon the whole board. I have asked a number of questions, and BERS staff has replied to a number of my questions, and I greatly appreciate the efforts of the BERS board, of the BERS executive staff and Chitra and the entire BERS administrative staff in responding to my questions and concerns with the number of line items that are contained within the proposed BERS administrative budget as presented in the resolution today. I simply don't feel comfortable voting on this budget today, and I do believe that within another month, I will be able to bring myself to a level of comfort that I will be able to be comfortable voting in the affirmative on this budget. I do want to ask either Sandy or Daniel to confirm that fee loss number of, I don't think it was 20 million. I think it was at least in the 7 digits, hopefully.
3.1 million.
3.1, okay. And thankfully, there are a number of items in the remainder of this agenda that will hopefully address potential quorum issues that could result as the result of state legislation that may be signed by the governor to make sure that we avoid such situations in the future. And as a BERS member, I take this governance challenge of the Board of Education retirement very seriously. Both myself and my wife are vested members of the Board of Education retirement system, and the needs of its members and of its staff are of an utmost priority for me. I take my role as a trustee very seriously. What I am saying today is that I don't feel comfortable voting in the affirmative on a budget today. I have confidence that the continuity of BERS will not be threatened by not voting in the affirmative on the budget as it is presented today. And I think I would hope that you can respect my opinion on this matter.
Hi, this is Tom Shepard. I understand that in all of these votes that we always have 3 options, right? So we can choose to approve something, oppose something, or abstain from it. And I would just suggest that, um, uh, perhaps if anyone is uncomfortable with voting to approve or disapprove or oppose something, that an abstention is warranted. I personally am in favor of approving this budget. Um, so, I think that, as Donald said, and I agree with him, if we met and we said we were going to do something by a certain time, then we should be prepared to follow through on our commitments. So, that's my take. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board before we move to, I suppose we have to move to a vote on this topic, given the statutory regime that is being communicated to me by the BERS General Counsel and the Law Department. Is that accurate?
Can you outline for me what the choices are about voting?
Oh, it's just affirmative, negative, or to abstain from a vote. That's all.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So Russell, one quick thing to add. I received your questions. Thank you for that. If any other trustees have questions or want more information about the board, please email me. Thank you.
All right.
Just one quick question. Is there a
Yeah.
certain number that's required for an item to pass if there were abstentions? With abstentions, what would the number of required votes to pass the item be reduced?
The number is a majority of the number required is a majority of the trustees who are present at the meeting.
Voting in the affirmative or the negative?
In the affirmative.
In the affirmative.
And it must include at least one employee representative.
Got it. Thank you.
So just to put a finer point on that, if I may, Alex, if I believe we have 11 total BERS board trustees in attendance this evening? 11, 12, how many do we have?
I have 12.
Okay, so you would require 7 affirmative votes in order for the budget to pass?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And abstention votes do not count as reduction of the denominator, so to speak. So if let's say, for example, that 2 members of the board were to abstain, it does not reduce the number of trustees in the affirmative that would be required. So it doesn't go down to 5 per se because of an abstention rather than a no vote. Ostensibly, the point that I'm trying to get at is there's no difference functionally in the tally between a no or an abstention.
I see what you mean.
That is true.
Yeah, so Russ, yes, this is the exact provision. Each act of the board shall be by a resolution adopted by a majority vote of the board as a whole. A quorum of such board shall consist of a majority of the board as a whole, including at least one employee representative. The concurrence of one employee representative shall be necessary for an act of such board. So Russ, you're correct. Essentially, an abstention is not really different from a negative vote in this setup.
All right. That being said, I would like to move to a roll call vote on this topic.
Can I just ask one question, Russell, before you go to that?
Of course, Sandy.
So we were prepared to offer 2 budget resolutions tonight.
I
just wanna make
appreciate that.
sure-
I'm not interested in necessarily pursuing that at this time. I would prefer to have additional time to consider calendar number 18. And that's candidly just where I'm at right now.
Are we proceeding with the vote?
I think we shall. Alex, if you would please do a roll call vote for us.
Of
To-
course.
This is on the calendar item number 18, so affirmative would be in favor, and then abstaining or negative would be voting against.
No, abstaining would be abstaining.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. My apologies.
Okay, Dr. Vasti Acosta,
I vote against.
thank you. Tazeen Azad, Tazeen Azad. If you are speaking, you might still be on mute. Or maybe, okay, we'll move on. Russell Buckley,
Against.
thank you. Gregory Faulkner,
No.
thank you. Dr. Angela Green,
Abstain.
thank you. Kyle Kimball,
Against.
thank you. Anthony Lopez,
Against.
thank you. John Maderick,
In favor?
thank you. Donald Nesbitt, thank you. Alan Ong,
Abstain.
thank you. Thomas Shepard,
In favor.
thank you. Gladys Ward,
Abstain.
thank you. I'm going to call Tazeen Azad again. Tazeen Azad, I think she may have dropped off the call. Okay, the count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against, 3 abstentions, and 3 in favor. The motion does not pass.
Thank you, Alex. I would like to request that we take this item up again at our July board meeting. The next item on the agenda is calendar item number 19, adoption of a policy regarding contract approval thresholds for the Board of Education retirement system. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved. Shepard.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second from John.
Thank you, John. Sandy and Sabrina, Ms. Hyatt, would you please tell us about this resolution?
Sabrina? Okay, so it's up to me. This is one of our resolutions that we wish to pass in order to protect the system from disruption related to changes at the board governance level and quorum risk. This contract approval thresholds, which are detailed in the resolution, allow for some contracts to be signed by the executive director, some approved by the executive committee, and the largest contracts approved by the board. I don't have the resolution in front of me. Alex, could you identify the particular breaks in the contract levels? Sorry, I didn't have that in front of me.
Of course. So the one moment. Let me quote directly from
At the moment, the rules and regulations of the Board of Ed retirement system require all contracts to be approved by the entire board.
So
This causes some disruption.
yeah. So Sandy, actually, this is not actually in the rules and regulations, and I don't believe there's a formal policy of this. But just so it's clear to the board, there is a long-standing past practice of all contracts for personal services to go through the board. Not all agencies do this. I think most of the other retirement systems do not, but this is the history and the past practice at BERS, which has been quite consistent. I believe that the historical rationale had to do with ensuring that we don't contract out for personal services that should have been the responsibility of staff. Right? So perhaps ideas about this general topic may have evolved in the last few decades, but this has been the consistent past practice within operational memory. So what staff is proposing here, if the board agrees, is to formalize this a little bit more and to create some gradations here so that there's some sense of proportion depending on the size of the contract and other factors. And if you wish, I can read the whole hierarchy to you. So at the lowest level, we have contract that could be approved by the executive director on his own authority. And these would be the following. They would be competitive procurements not greater than 100,000, government contract rides / piggyback contracts up to 500,000. That means a contract that's approved by another government agency and that we are also using for with permission, right? It could be a state or city agency. We're riding on their contract. MWBE procurements up to 500,000. So these would be approved minority or women owned businesses approved by the city. And lastly, contract amendments and extensions for a period of up to 1 year, such that the total term of the agreement shall not exceed 5 years, and the cumulative total cost to BERS shall not exceed $100,000. So this is the lowest rung. The next rung would be contracts that can be approved on the authority of the executive committee. This would include procurements greater than $100,000, but not greater than $500,000. Government contracts government contract rides piggyback contracts greater than 500,000, but not greater than 1 million. Contract amendments and extensions for a period greater than 1 year, but not greater than 3 years, such that the cumulative total contract amount shall not exceed 500,000, I think was the intention. I think this is a typo. I think this should be 500,000 in line with item number 1. And lastly, emergency sole source and negotiated acquisition procurements not greater than 100,000. So emergency sole source and negotiated acquisition procurements these are various exemptions we take under the Procurement Policy Board rules. Exemptions to following a full-fledged competitive process, so the threshold is lower. So these are the two lower rungs, what the executive director would be able to approve and what the executive committee would be able to approve. Anything above that would remain as it is now, the responsibility of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you for that detail, Alex. Definitely appreciate it. Are there any questions from the board on, I guess maybe not an adjustment per se to contract approval thresholds, but an establishment of contract approval thresholds, if I may? Is that approximately accurate, Alex?
If yes, from a formal perspective, yes. We have a tradition, but I do not believe that we have a formal policy at this time. So yes.
Excellent. Are there any questions from? Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you.
Russell?
I didn't want to interrupt, but I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Sabrina, thank you.
Hi, this is
Too late
Dr.
to bail me
Acosta. I have
out.
a question, Russell.
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Acosta.
I'd like to know the rationale behind the 100,000 minimum. How did you come up with that number?
$100,000 is the cutoff in both the DOE rules for procurement and the PPB rules for procurement, where things have to be advertised publicly depending on the solicitation type.
So this is, I think everything below that is considered a small purchase. Right. So these thresholds, of course, are proposals for the board's consideration, and we're happy, to make any adjustments that the board would like. Of course, we can update all of these terms live.
I'm back to Sabrina's response, just for my understanding. So what you're saying is that 100,000, anything above 100,000 becomes kind of public, right? Because like
It would have to be publicly
it would have to be public. And so what we're saying here is that we're going to give authority for the things that are not public.
The lower dollar
The
value
lower dollars are not
procurement.
public. So now we're, not only is it not public, but it also would not be come to the board at all. So it would not be seen by anyone other than the executive director.
The intention is to update the board with what has been approved. For, you know, I'm not sure what
So
intervals,
you're
whether
saying that
that's
the
monthly.
intention is that this has been the practice, although it has not been formalized in any way. I'm trying to understand.
So the idea is that it would help to streamline the timelines that are associated with these lower dollar value procurements. So often what has happened is that we may have something that currently would be approved by the board. It is rather low in value, but because the board only meets at every month, we have to add that additional time to the timeline for award. Certainly not trying to keep anyone in the dark. The intention is to report on them, but because the risk associated with making these types of lower dollar value awards is lower, the idea is that the executive director would have the authority to go ahead and approve them.
If I may, Sabrina, not only is
Sure,
that
absolutely.
the intention, but the resolution as presented requires the executive director to report to the board.
Okay.
It's also attempting to eliminate what happened last summer, but the board didn't meet because of quorum issues and we couldn't have a vote. So if this were to pass, it would give the executive director the option to approve it themselves. So that's another reason we've done this.
But I thought this was the practice.
The original practice was all contracts had to be specifically approved by board resolution.
Yes.
So that's what's been done up to this resolution now. So it's, this would change things.
Yes.
Then one other thing, when you're issuing a check, how many signatures are on that required?
CFO have to sign it as well as you, Sandy.
Yep. At least two. I can't speak to the check. I can speak to the approvals that trigger the EFT or the check.
Okay, so
if I may, I'm sorry. The voucher is signed by the supervisor, the CFO, and the executive director. All the checks are signed by the controller. So.
Thank you, Chitra.
Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, this is Greg. Would there be a limit on the number of contracts that could be approved in that fashion per vendor? So a vendor wouldn't show up and say, I have 6 contracts at $100,000 a piece.
This proposal does not contain such a limit. Like I said, we're happy to modify the proposal as the board wishes.
Well, I'm just wondering, is that you know, I think this makes sense, but I'm just wondering, would we limit the number of contracts that could be given to one vendor under that non-approval of the board?
I understand what you're saying. So,
Yeah.
So as a general rule, all of the procurement rules, whichever set you're using, look down on the practice of dividing one agreement into multiple different contracts so that we, basically in an effort to skirt the rules, right? So we're mindful of this and we do not do that, right? Such a thing does not appear explicitly in, so this restriction that you're saying does not appear explicitly in this policy. We're happy to add it You should know, though, that this is something that we're mindful of and something that we do not do. If we're going to do more business with a given vendor, while we have a running contract with that vendor, we will always attempt to amend our current contract.
I'd also like to add that a vendor could feasibly have multiple contracts with us below this threshold, but the scopes of work associated with those contracts would be different, and we would be awarding those contracts based on individual procurement processes. So it's not like what Alex was saying, that we would be taking a large a project that was valued at a very high value and then dividing it up so that they're kind of getting the same thing.
Well, I would feel good if there was some transparency by looping in one of the two chairs of the Board of Trustees in that process, that there was some kind of triggered notification, because there may be a case where you need to do that, that there would be some triggered notification that the two chairs or representing the trustees would at least be part of that conversation.
Well, there's also the oversight position of the budget. You know, we detail all expected expenditures, and it is only the board in its aggregate that can approve the budget and improve any change in where the money is allocated in the budget. So
got it.
Kind of have that master control over
Okay.
where the money comes from and goes to.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
The resolution does require that any contracts we enter into be reported to the board.
Okay.
This is Tom. So I just want to make sure that, you know, we're clear, right? Like the intent of all of this is to prevent the kinds of issues that we had last year where we didn't have a quorum and as such could not go into or could not make particular investments that ended up in a net loss for BERS members, right? And
Sorry,
not
please continue.
exclusively, yeah, not exclusively, but that's part of it, right? Like it's part of the reason why is that there's business that needs to happen, and if we, you know, and the way that the rules are written, it's like almost every action at the board, that every action that happens has to have the approval of the full board. And what we're doing here is just saying that, you know, we can pull out some of these smaller dollar value things that really don't have as much of an impact, and have them be approved by either the executive director or the executive committee. Am I correct there?
Yeah, I think the big picture is correct. I just want to make sure that everybody's clear that these are not investments. These are contracts for services.
Yeah, we get. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we understood that.
I also think it's important just to note that the fee savings that were lost last summer do not necessarily result in a net loss on the investment. I think that's as I think Daniel mentioned earlier, it was a $3.1 million savings that we had to forego because we were not able to make a first close in a particular private markets investment. But that does not necessarily mean that the investments into those funds has resulted in a net loss to BERS and its members. I think it's important. I see you smiling, Sandy. Just want to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate.
Well, it's kind of like suggesting that the guy who was going to build your house this week is going to charge you a $50,000 discount. And next week you missed and he charges you the extra 50,000. No, it comes off the top. The incremental 3.1 million comes off the top of anything that happens in that investment. It's gone.
Right. I guess my point being that there's still a possibility that BERS makes money on the investment that we invest the savings on.
Oh, yes. Yes. This is a change in the cost of making the investment, not the return on the investment. Yep. It's the expense of management. Yep. You're right.
Yeah, and if I can add, listening to some of the comments, I think this is more of a need on why individuals are asked to be on certain committees, like the executive committee and other committees. Last month when we asked, no one wanted to join some of the committees, but I think this is important that you are part of that process. So once it comes before the individuals, as Greg mentioned, who are a part of the actual process. But if we don't have individuals there, then this is why we get some of the questions that we have here.
And I would think it's probably going to get more challenging once the panel expands.
Exactly why resolution
Yeah.
19 and 20 have
That's
presented.
right.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
Okay, thank you for that robust discussion on calendar item number 19. I think perhaps appreciating all of the various resolves that we'll have, reporting back out to the executive director, or authorized by the executive director and the audit and the executive committee to the full board of trustees on any contract approvals. Perhaps if the executive director is willing, that you and your deputy could potentially report on any contracts that are approved solely by the executive director. If the executive committee meets before the full board of trustee meets, which I don't think we need to amend the resolution for in any way, shape, or form, just as a matter of practice, I think that would be great. And unless there's any other questions or comments from the board of trustees on this resolution at this time, I would like to move in favor of a vote.
Trustees, if anyone is looking at the resolution right now, I just would like to note a correction, which is on item 2.3, under the executive committee's authorities, contract amendments and extensions for a period greater than 1 year but not greater than 3 years, such that the cumulative total contract amount shall not exceed. This should be 500,000. That is to say, it's meant to match what is in sub item 1 of the same list. So
and also adding an extra 0 on sub item 2.
Yes, that's right. That's a typo. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Alex. Any other questions from trustees on calendar item number 19? Noting those two corrections.
Not a question, but this is Karina. Just wanted to let you know that I'm online. I'm sorry I'm so late for the call.
Thank you, Karina.
Noted.
All right. I would like to move calendar item number 19 towards a vote. If you are in favor of approving calendar item number 19, adoption of a policy regarding contract approval thresholds for the Board of Education retirement system, please vote in favor now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Tom Shepard.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Donald.
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi, Karina.
Hi, Angela Green.
Hi, Gladys Ward.
Hi, Vastia Costa.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is calendar item number 20, amendment to the authority and procedure of the executive committee. May I please have a motion to consider?
Motion, John.
Thank you,
Second,
John.
Tony.
Thank you, Tony. All right, Sandy, this is part 2 of the two-part expansion of panel. Safeguards, like take it away.
Yeah, this as Tom Shepard indicated, this is our response to a perceived risk of quorum and Board of Trustees membership identification that we see potentially resulting from the new panel for education policy constituents that is yet to be passed by the legislature and the governor. We wish to avoid disruptions, discontinuity in the governance of the agency, and we are further empowering the executive committee with new authorities, and we are proposing to extend the life of the committee past the pre-designed reconstitution in January 2023. The reconstitution would be triggered by the existence and attendance of a quorum of the new Board of Trustees in 2023. Alex, if you'd like to give the detail, if you have the resolution in front of you, or it's been circulated to trustees.
Of course, yes, of course. You should all have it, but I'm happy to run through what this contains. So one item that it contains is that it gives the executive committee the named authorities that used to belong to a committee the board had many years ago that was called the proxy committee, and which has the power to exercise certain shareholder rights on behalf of the full board. Like I said, many years ago, we did have a committee like this. It's kind of been dormant for a long time. We are bringing these powers back and giving them to the executive committee. These powers are the following. Approve the annual shareholder engagement plan as proposed by the New York City Controller's Office of Corporate Governance. Periodically review, modify, and approve proxy voting deadlines. And review and approve shareholder letters and other engagements proposed by the Controller's Office of Corporate Governance on behalf of the BERS Board of Trustees. So that's one thing that this contains is to grant the executive committee the powers of a proxy committee. The second thing that it contains goes hand in hand with the resolution that you just passed, which is that the executive committee has authority over certain contracts for services, right? And so these kind of go hand in hand. You have already authorized that the executive committee has the power to approve these contracts. We're just incorporating it into the authority and procedure of the executive committee so that these two are lined up. The third thing that is here, this is meant to be a catch-all for the scenario where the board fails to make quorum in the beginning of the year. So by its constitution, which is this document, the executive committee is meant to change every year, with a new members being appointed in the beginning of each year. So appointed in January and their term ending at the end of December. The issue here is out of a concern that there may be some delay in being able to vote. In practice, this means a delay in making quorum, right? This is something that happened, this year, for example, right? And basically all it says is that the committee shall continue to maintain its powers until the full board meets to appoint a new committee. That's all. So just to be clear, this is accurate. This was not necessary for the composition of the committee in general. This was already the case for the composition of the committee in general. However, there are certain investment powers which are triggered to end after a year. And we're just making sure that these powers are retained until the full board is actually able to meet. So any questions, please let me know.
Would the executive committee expand by any chance because of the additional panel members?
So this would not happen automatically, and this is not included in this slate of amendments. Of course, the authority and procedure of the committee can be expanded at any time if that is the wish of the board.
And we discussed this, Greg, as something that seemed likely if our board becomes 27 individuals.
Yeah.
We think, however, that it might not be advantageous to do this right now, because suddenly you would have to appoint all these additional people, let's say two members and 2 alternates, when you don't actually have the new members of this board yet. So where, you get the idea.
Yeah, I just was wondering if if you anticipate that it's going to be required that we do it.
No, we don't think it would be required. The board can, however, do that.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you
Hi,
for
this
that
is Tom.
detailed. Yep, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this. The one of the major parts of this is really making sure that there's no lapse, right? because the way things run right now, it runs from January to December, and then you have to vote on a new executive committee in January. And if we don't have enough members to actually vote for a new executive committee, then we actually don't have an executive committee until we get people together to vote. And what this is saying is that the current executive committee will retain its authority until you actually get enough members together to vote for a new one.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Means we
Thank
can't
you.
leave.
Right.
There will be resistance to it, that's for sure.
Yeah, so it's locking us in.
Yeah.
You can't leave the committee as long as you remain on the board.
Yes.
You can leave the board, of course.
This is Basti. I have a question. I also heard that this is kind of in response to the legislation that we're anticipating is going to be passed, but hasn't been passed yet. So, is this preemptive, or do we really need to take care of it now? Should we take care of it once the legislation has actually passed?
The legislation has passed. It
It did?
doesn't have the governor's signature yet. So we'll see about that, of course. But as to the strategy, I would defer to Sandy.
Yeah, I would say that the compound issues or risks related to uncertainty as to who the new board members would be, the timing of their appointment. Let me point back to the fact that we didn't have January, February, and March meetings. The risk of having a higher quorum number, which will go from 10 to 14, and then the layered on risk of it seems to me, the likelihood that we will no longer be able to meet virtually. OML meeting rules will be reinforced, and we will have to actually be present. And all these combined issues create I would argue, substantial risk of discontinuity of governance.
Thank you for all that, Sandy. Any further questions from the board on this amendment to the authority and procedure of the executive committee before we move to a vote? Hearing none, I will move to take a vote on calendar item number 20, amendment to the authority and procedure of the executive committee. All those in favor, please indicate your approval now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Aye, Tony. Aye,
Hi,
Donna.
Tom Shepard.
Karina.
Hi, Basti.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is calendar item number 21, appointment of an alternate audit committee member. May I have a motion to consider?
So move, Tom Shepard.
Thank you,
Second.
Tom. Thank you, John, with the second. At the March board meeting, so this is we brought this up last board meeting. We're bringing it up again today. The current composition of the audit committee is myself, John, Tony with Greg as the alternate, Tom Shepard with Karina as an alternate, and Alan Ong. Alan Ong does not have an alternate, so we're trying to get an alternate for Alan. Looking for a volunteer to serve as Alan's alternate. Obviously, you are all welcome to attend, even not as a member or alternate of the audit committee, but in the event that our friend Alan is unable to join us, the alternate would be able to step in, cast votes, and allow us to still meet quorum during these quarterly audit committee meetings. As referenced earlier by Donald and by Daniel and Sandy as well, audit committee is a great time. It provides oversight, financial reporting, risk management, internal controls. If you've ever wanted to understand how a pension system truly functions and operates at its core, there is no better forum to understand the inner workings of cash accounts and software upgrades. And boy, I mean, I give you the whole menu here. It's I'm being sarcastic, but I'm also being serious. It is a
Exciting
genuinely,
and entertaining.
it is a genuinely insightful forum to better understand the challenges and the risks and opportunities that BERS faces on a more granular detail than we're necessarily able to get into at the full Board of Trustee level. So call this number now, 888-555. But seriously, would anyone like to volunteer to be an alternate for Alanong on the 5th chair of the audit committee? If no one volunteers, you're going to have to hear the same sales pitch from me every board meeting until someone volunteers. So if that's not motivation,
And Alan has to go to all the meetings. No, but I do have a question. Is this because I'm attached as an alternate to Tony? Let's assume Tony's at the meeting, but Alan can't be there. Wouldn't I just automatically fill in for Alan?
my
I mean, is it kind
understanding
of
is
at large, or we have to be
unfortunately,
specifically attached to
yeah,
one
go ahead,
person?
Alex.
That's not the way the charter of this committee is currently structured. Basically, under the charter of this committee, each alternate is an alternate for a specific member. In the future, we can consider changing the way this works.
I would suggest we change it and that the alternates be at large.
Yeah, so this is obviously a viable structure. It's a question of the understanding between the trustees, right? And this board is different from many other boards in that it often operates by consensus. So, it's really not it's not a factional kind of board.
Alex, can we make that change by resolution at
Of
this
course.
meeting?
Well, you know what? Can we make it right now, you mean?
Yes.
Yes, I would like, you know what, if we can table this and then just introduce it later on so I can put something together?
Sure.
Table it to the end of this meeting.
Yes.
We can always also pick it up in July, and I can maybe
We don't want your speech again.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to give you the speech again. I'm saying maybe I'm going to talk to some of y'all outside the parameters of these four walls of the WebEx to see if I can't wrangle up a willing volunteer with a more personal pitch.
But even if you do that, I think that but even if you do that, I think the alternate should be at large and they could fill in for anyone as needed.
I think that's an idea worth exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if I could add, I actually agree with what Greg is saying. It does give a little more flexibility in case you have someone that's unable to attend. As long as we have alternates, right, then we should be able to maintain a quorum of the committee.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Some of the alternates on the committee, some of the members of the committee are ex officio, for example, the chancellor's representative. My recommendation would be that the elected alternates be at large, not the alternates who are automatically alternates because they are the alternate of another board member. I think that makes the most sense. So for example, Russ is Lindsay's alternate, and he would remain Lindsay's alternate, but the elected alternates would be at large. Does this make sense to everyone?
No, I agree.
Okay, so we will, we can bring a resolution like that to the July board meeting. Yeah, I understand the request.
Should we move the table of this then?
Yeah.
Is there anything to table?
Well, was there a motion to consider? There was, yes. I think we should table since this is under consideration.
Can I have a motion to table?
Motion to
So I'll
table,
move
Donald.
the table.
All right, I got Donald and I got a second from Tom.
We're tabling it to the next meeting.
Correct.
So move the table to the next meeting. I think we have specific that we're tabling this to the next meeting, to the July meeting.
Yes, I'll accept that amendment, Greg. Absolutely.
Sure.
Excellent. I've got a first from Donald, a second from Tom, to table calendar item number 21 until the July BERS board meeting. Do I have, I will move to a vote on the table. All those in favor of tabling calendar item number 21 to the July board meeting, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Hi, Tom Shepard.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Basti.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion to table passes unanimously, and maybe if you're all lucky, you won't get my sales pitch on the audit committee in July. The next item on the agenda is calendar item number 22, authorization to amend an agreement with Jennifer Temps Inc. to provide staffing services to the Board of Education retirement system. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved. Second from John.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, John. Sandy, can you please tell us about calendar item number 22?
Yes, calendar item 22 and 23 are intimately related. We did an RFP for our temp services, and we are currently in transition period between these two contracts. We are finding that we need extra time under the expiring contract that we would like to extend in order to facilitate the movement of our temporary staff from one provider to the other. In addition, we are anticipating some delays related to a recent DOE change in their security protocols. Actually, hearing just in the last few days that these delays have not been significant. So this is mostly two changes in contracts to facilitate a transfer of temporary staff from one contract to another. There is no incremental cost. There is some shifting of payments from one contract to another, but these are all within the budgeted amounts.
I'm not on mute. Thank you, Sandy. Any questions from the board on calendar item number 22? This is Jennifer Temps. Hearing none, I will move to a vote on calendar item number 22. All those in favor of calendar item number 22, authorization to amend an agreement with Jennifer Temps to provide staffing services to the Board of Education retirement system, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Tony. Aye, Greg.
Hi,
Hi, Angela.
Hi, Basti.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is calendar item number 23, authorization to amend an agreement with 10 positions, group of companies to provide staffing solutions to the Board of Education retirement system. May I have a motion to consider?
Move, Tom Shepard.
Thank you, Tom. May I have a second?
So, second, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Sandy, please continue.
Yep, item 23, as I indicated, is tied to item 22. Item 23 is our agreement with Temp Positions, which is our new provider. And this is just a sliding of those contracts and a reallocation of some money from one to the other in order to accommodate transfer of temporary staff from one to this new provider.
Thank you, Sandy. Any questions from the board on calendar item number 23? Hearing none, I will now move to vote on calendar item number 23, authorization to amend an agreement with the 10 positions group of companies to provide staffing services to the Board of Education retirement system. All those in favor, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Hi,
Angela.
Alan.
Hi, Tom Shepard.
Hi, Karina.
Hi, Gladys Ward.
Hi, Basti.
Hi, Kyle.
Any-
Simmons.
Hi, Tazina.
Any- Thank you all. Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on the agenda is calendar item number 24, authorization to amend an agreement with McLean & Company to provide HR research and advisory services to the Board of Education retirement system. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Who was that?
Tony. So moved.
Thank you, Tony. Sorry. May I have a second?
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Donald, with the second. Michelle, the BERS Director of Human Resources is here to tell us about the resolution. Michelle, are you there?
Oh, I'll take that. I'll take that. This is Lydia. I'm the L&D Deputy Director.
Hi, Lydia. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. So the board is requested to authorize an amendment to the agreement with McLean and Company to add newly promoted supervisors to a 10-week management fundamentals training program. So the additional cost to add the supervisors to the training is $26,220 for a total contract amount not to exceed $170,800. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Are there any questions from the board for Lydia or BERS executive staff on calendar item number 24? I guess I'll just ask, when do you expect to be able to start this 10-week management training program?
As soon as we sign the contract, as soon as the contract is reviewed by the law department, we can do that. It requires an hour and a half average a week from each supervisor.
Is it all supervisors or just the new ones?
Supervisor.
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, sorry. This is for all the supervisors.
All right, excellent. Any other questions from the board? I think it is an excellent opportunity for supervisors at the Board of Education retirement system to be trained on management skills. Hearing no other questions on calendar item number 24, authorization to amend an agreement with McLean and Company to provide HR research and advisory services to the Board of Education retirement system, I will now move to a vote. All those in favor of the resolution, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Tony. Aye, Greg.
Hi, Angela. Hi, Karina.
Hi, Tazeen.
Tom.
Gladys Ward.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The next item on our agenda is calendar item number 25, authorization to enter into an agreement with KPX Global to develop a BERS ESG integration pilot project. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second,
Tony.
Gladys Ward.
Thank you, Gladys. Antonio, you have the floor. Would you please tell us about the BERS ESG integration pilot project?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rush, and good evening. In April 2020, the BERS Board of Trustees revised its investment policy statement in conjunction with an overall review of its investment portfolio and program. And as part of that revision, the board defined as part of its investment strategy, integration of environmental, social, and governance factors into its decision-making process. Additionally, in September 2021, the Board of Trustees passed its Net Zero Climate Action Plan. The action plan is designed to put BERS on the path to mitigate the risks, take advantage of opportunities, and reduce contributions of our investments that our investors make to climate change. As part of the plan, the board directed the investment strategy department to develop an implementation plan to achieve its ESG integration and net zero climate action plan goals. Those include the integration of ESG considerations into all aspects of the board's investment decision-making, so asset allocation, portfolio construction, and manager selection, specific considerations of climate change risk and opportunity and net zero alignment in the evaluation, due diligence, and selection of investment managers, exploring appropriate tools for evaluating climate risks to the portfolio, and prioritizing proxy voting, engagement, and policy advocacy that promote net zero emissions. The resolution that you have before you today is our recommendation to work with KPX Global in a pilot project for our private market portfolio. Given the lack of competitors in the space, particularly ones that promise continuous rather than static monitoring of key ESG metrics, we believe that working with KPX Global is the best way for us to proceed. KPX has already presented to the Executive Committee of the Board of Trustees on the outlines of the project and their qualifications. KPX has worked with K2 Advisors, a hedge fund of funds manager and advisor with over $12 billion in assets under management, on things like ESG integration and manager assessments. K2 is part of Franklin Templeton, the $1.5 trillion asset management company. KPX has also worked with other family offices, including River Capital Partners, a $2 billion family office. Under the proposal, KPX will provide the following during a proposed 8-month engagement: consultation on the development of ESG and impact priorities with the Board of Trustees and other stakeholders, development of a policy and priority statement for approval by the Board of Trustees, an assessment of BERS current data, projects, and outstanding needs, assistance in identifying private market partners for the pilot program. We plan on partnering with 2 of our investment managers during these 8 months. Selection and creation of customized metrics, and this is key, that during the consultation process, we will take the input from stakeholders and the Board of Trustees to develop customized metrics to report to the board. And reporting of those metrics using what's called the Continuous Accountability Monitoring System, which is a platform for further analysis that, again, that is continuous rather than static. The proposed pilot program will run for 8 months, somewhere between July 2022 to February 2023, or depending on when the contract is finally signed, with a cost not to exceed $125,000. Approximately 50% of the stated cost will go to consulting and engagement, where KPX will work with the trustees and stakeholders to develop priorities and policies. The other half will go to engagement with data scientists to create the metrics, the data collection, and the development of a platform for continuous monitoring. From our perspective, the project will be deemed successful under the following criteria: on-time completion of all deliverables. We put a statement of work within the packet that the board received prior to the meeting. Clear, actionable priorities for BERS Net Zero Climate Pledge, successful engagement with BERS investment managers, metrics that address the board's priorities in the following areas: environmental, things like carbon emissions; social, things like human rights; and governance, like board diversity. And finally, the development of a report and portal for continuous access to BERS custom metrics. Finally, after the end of the 8-month project, we can take the analysis of KPX and use it to our benefit. There's no obligation for us to continue working with them after the pilot project. The board alone will deem whether or not the pilot project is a success. Within your packets, in addition to the statement of work and memo, you also have a presentation that that KPX gave to the executive committee. I'm happy to take any questions on this item.
Thank you, Antonio. You mentioned the contracting cycle.
Mm-hmm.
When do you think is a realistic time frame for the scope of work to actually begin? I mean, I can't imagine that the vendors are necessarily willing to work at risk.
So my guess is September is my best. So you'd put in July here, thinking we're going to propose this at an earlier date. My guess is that should you all approve this, they've already gotten started. Certainly, the vendor is registered in Passport, and so they'll just kind of go to the terms and conditions. One of the good things is that what I found is that typically smaller vendors who are very eager to work with us on this pilot project are generally more eager to also accept the terms and conditions of working with the city. So I'm hoping that this goes a bit faster than some of our other contracts. So if I had to put a stake in the timeline, probably after Labor Day would when we begin. That's I think a achievable goal.
Thank you. And I think in a prior presentation on this topic, you had described a potential run rate at the conclusion of this 8-month engagement, which would cost $125,000, a potential run rate of about $40,000.
That's I guess for the platform and analytics themselves. Because I think if I had to say thinking about a success, kind of 2 or 3 parts. The platform, the analytics are one, and our typically when we work with the platform, they run around that. Think about Clarity AI, for instance, which is our public markets platform, runs about $25,000 to $30,000 per year. And then the consulting arrangement, obviously, the getting up to speed wouldn't necessarily be a issue. So that would be, I think, a separate one entirely. And I can see that being more of an ad hoc or as needed relationship once the pilot project is over.
Got it. I will say, as having attended the presentation during the executive committee back in March, I am very enthusiastic about the potential results of such an integration pilot project from both the environmental and the social lens. If any other executive committee members want to speak on it, I know, Tom, you were present for that presentation as well as a few others. I think this is a really excellent way for us to follow up on the net zero goals that were integrated into the investment policy statement last year. And I commend you and your team, Antonio, for putting this proposal together. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, hi, this is Tom. I am curious because one of the things that we indicated is that we were going to circle back around and really discuss how this policy is playing out and what the overall benefit is to our members. So I just wanted to really kind of get more information on that part.
Absolutely. And so within your package, you have the proposed statement of work. Phase one is a consultation on the development of ESG impact priorities. And so that is where we talk with the stakeholders, trustees, administrative staff, investment consultants, plan members, and others who may be identified by the department to discuss those particular needs. So for instance, we could certainly see, and the thing we did not want to do was we did not want to dictate what those priorities are. Obviously, you know, we have our opinions about what would be most important, certainly in environmental, thinking about carbon emissions, but certainly you can think about even each asset class might have their own particular priorities. You can imagine there are different priorities around real estate than there are around private equity or fixed income, for instance. So but the important thing we didn't want to dictate that process. We wanted, and we thought it'd be better to have an outside group kind of mediate between those particular priorities, if that makes any sense. Like, again, I think anybody you would talk to about climate change generally will say kind of emissions is something that we got to get our hands around, but certainly in areas like the social aspect of ESG, we thought it was proper to have maybe KPX work with the board of trustees, executive committee, and stakeholder on that. Because it is one where there are differences of opinion, and having a group that has worked with other faith-based groups, with faith-based investors, I should say, and a family office, which you can imagine the politics around that, a third or fourth generation family, or in asset managers portfolio managers who have a lot of different opinions. So Tom, I think the first phase of this project will be working with you all to identify where we want to focus our time when it comes to the ESG integration process.
Thank you, Antonio. And the one thing I will add is I know when we're talking about ESG, we really started around things like divestment and fossil fuels and such, right? But I really do want this trustee board to really start having a conversation around investment with diverse managers, right? So, that is certainly part of an overall ESG policy.
Definitely. And one last thing I'll add to that is, if you see in phase 2 of the proposed statement of work, they are not only going to evaluate our needs, but also kind of what we've done and what our vendors are currently doing. So for instance, Axia does ESG reports on all the private funds, or many of the private funds that we invest in. What are the concrete goals we set within, you see, either net zero policy or around diversity and inclusion in asset management? So absolutely here, loud and clear. And both we contemplated that in phase 1 and phase 2 of the statement of work.
Let me just Antonio, you want to? Yeah, let me just jump in and echo what Tom just said. That I'm very interested in seeing how this pans out in terms of diversity and inclusion as part of this, and that we look to other markets so that we're not forced a lot of times to make decisions around companies that have questionable practices around these questions.
Absolutely.
Tony, do you want to jump in? You would look like you would raise your hand. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, Russ, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I just want to reiterate what I said at the executive committee. I do think, Antonio, that if you can put together a small training, as you did when you were in the working for the mayor, on fiduciary versus your moral perspective on things, and how both things balance out at times, right? I think it's important that the new trustees actually get a sense of that type of training that you did. That was actually excellent for me when coming in. My moral compass was everything, and it was, hey, no, we can't do that. Why are we doing this? And I had to look at it in a balanced way. Even our pension system, just one example I could give the board, in that training, where we spoke of divestment from things like guns, right? In the community I grew up in, gun violence is prevalent, right? So for me at BERS, it would make sense. However, you had police trustees who said, well, if we divest fully from guns, we don't have a job, right? So just showing the differences between, you know, what's going to be a moral and fiduciary thing for one may not be for another. But I think it'd be helpful, Antonio, if you can put a small training together just for the BERS trustees, I think that would be helpful in the progress moving forward of the trustees.
Yeah, let me just add, no, I agree that, you know, I'm all in for any kind of training, but I also think there's a way to accomplish both things where we can basically feel that we've resolved the discomfort around the moral issues around voting for companies that have a history of discrimination, and also make money and meet our fiduciary responsibilities to make money for the fund. I'm just asking the staff to explore if there are ways that we can do that so we don't necessarily have to face these compromises of our role in being responsible to the fund, but also being responsible to our moral points of view. And that hopefully there's a way that we could marry both things and you know, do both at the same time. Maybe there's not, and then we have to sort of question that, but maybe there is a way to do it.
Absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, and you know, say this, we have a fiduciary obligation to the fund. And so, but I do not think, I think it's a false choice. And so I think, you know, but what our important thing is to explore it. Like at the end of the day, BERS, we've been able to make really good returns, and I think have been able to as maybe not be as selective as we'd like all the time, but to be a bit more discerning in some of our fund selection. And I don't think that's necessarily a complete barrier. But importantly, I think most importantly, I think working with somebody whose full-time dedication is to helping us get to that level is why this proposal is here. And I, you know, should it be approved, I look forward to you know, getting across the finish line and then working with you all on how we best do that integration, given our obligations to the fund and to our members.
Yeah, Antonio, maybe the first step before because I know a big portion of this would be engagement with trustees on sort of setting the course. To Donald's point, maybe even before that begins, maybe we have an ESG, so to speak, summit of sorts to kind of delve into some of the issues that Donald is raising about how fiduciary responsibility and environmental, social, and governance concerns intersect.
Absolutely. Happy to put that together with the team. And Sandy, I will.
Just so trustees understand, we had planned to do this in cooperation with the Coriad conference in end of July 20th to 22nd, and given the robust legislative changes that seem to be hanging over our head, we decided to wait until we had resolution of who trustees would be as of August 15th. So expect a robust training operation for September, October.
Absolutely, yeah.
Always good to, for me at least, I find it somewhat easier to do stuff locally. The train trip down to DC was nice and convenient for us. So Miami,
but I
not
think
so
for the
much
new
me
trustees
personally.
coming on board locally would be good. Just as I was mentioning, to have something locally, easily accessible as part of the onboarding that'll address some of these kinds of concerns that come up, and you know, because it is a big discomfort area.
Yep,
definitely, and
that's our plan.
Absolutely. Last time we partnered with New York Law School. The 2 times we did it to have a good big space for people to get out, and so we'll explore those options and open up a few, because New York Law School and I think Harvard's Hauser Center helped us put together a pretty good program. But we have local partners, Baruch and things like that. So we will come back to you with the training.
Good.
I got a number of members on my team on this call. You guys are hearing it, so let's get started.
Get on it.
Yeah, the Baruch training that happened, I guess it was probably 3 years ago. That was it's put on by a couple of folks within their, I guess, business school, their graduate business program, and it was maybe 10 weeks or so of just soup to nuts, all you could possibly take in, and it was maybe 4 hours Tuesday mornings for 10 straight weeks with skips for holidays and such. And that, I don't know if now that we've got a new head of MOPI, that maybe something like that can be put back on the calendars. I would certainly be happy to sit through another go get my 201, so to speak. I found that really useful as well.
As aggressively as we got rid of fossil fuels, let's do the same thing about companies that discriminate.
All right. Any other questions from the board on calendar item number 25 before I move to a vote? Hearing none. We will now vote on calendar item number 25, authorization to enter into an agreement with KPX Global to develop a BERS ESG integration pilot project. We've already got the motion and second. All those in favor of the resolution, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Greg.
Aye, Tony.
Aye, Gladys Ford.
Aye, Karina.
Aye, Basti.
Aye, Kyle Kimball.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. The next item on our agenda is calendar item number 26, adoption of the interim chief actuary's recommendations regarding the tier 346 loan insurance premium rate for fiscal year 2023. May I have a motion to consider?
So moved.
I got a first from Tony and a second from
Donald.
Thank you, Donald. We have Michael Hunter from the Actuary's Office here to discuss. Michael, would you please go ahead?
Thank you, Russ. Active members are allowed to borrow from their employee contribution balance, subject to limitations. The loans are not repaid in case of death. So a loan insurance premium is calculated. So, for example, if the loan insurance payment rate is 6%, it's increased to 6.2% in order to provide that premium charge. So we determine the loan insurance premium rate or calculate one consistent with a weighted average mortality rate for actives taking into account age and gender. So the board is requested to adopt a 0.2% loan insurance premium rate for tier 346 outstanding loan balances originating during fiscal year 23. And the 0.2% rate has been in effect since 2016. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Michael. No questions from me. Any questions from the board on calendar item number 26? Hearing none, I will move to a vote on calendar item number 26, adoption of the interim chief actuary's recommendations regarding the tier 3, 4, and 6 loan insurance premium rate for fiscal year 2023. All those in favor of the resolution, please vote in the affirmative now. Aye, Russ.
Aye, Tony.
Aye, Alan.
Aye, Greg.
Aye, John.
Aye, Karina.
Aye, Basti.
Aye, Donald.
Aye, Tazina. So.
Any opposed or abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously. The final item on the agenda for this evening, calendar item number 27, noting receipt of the fiscal note report. May I have a motion to discuss?
So moved.
Thank you, Tony. May I have a second?
Second, then Gladys Ward.
Thank you, Gladys. Mike, can you please tell us about the fiscal note report?
Sure. There are two additional fiscal notes that had a potential impact on BERS. Both involve COLA. When calculating the COLA, there are two limitations. One is on the range of rates for which a COLA rate can be applicable, and the other is the amount of pension for which is eligible for COLA. So the first fiscal note involved just an increase in the amount of pension eligible for COLA, with the increase being from the existing 18,000 to 21,000. The cost for that for BERS would have been approximately 27.7 million. The other COLA was a small ad hoc COLA for a small number of long-term pensioners, pensioners who were commenced their benefit during the years 1961 through 1972. The cost for that was de minimis. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Michael. No questions from me. Are there any questions from Board of Trustees for Michael on calendar item number 27? These are 2 fiscal notes related to COLAs for members. Hearing none, I will move to, I guess we don't need to vote on this. This is simply discussion oriented. So thank you, Michael. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for sticking on for the entirety of our board meeting today to give that
You're very
presentation.
welcome. You're very welcome.
That concludes the agenda for this meeting. The next meeting of the BERS Board of Trustees is currently scheduled for July 28th. So mark your calendars, details to follow. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So move, Tom Shepard. Second.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Mike. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please indicate your approval now. Aye, Russ.
Aye.
Greg.
Gladys Ward.
Hi, Karina.
I, Angela Green.
I can't imagine there will be any opposed or abstentions. We stand adjourned at 6:01 p.m. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening and a good rest of your June. Happy early summer solstice to you all. Thank you for your time and engagement, and we will all be in touch soon.
And happy belated.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye,
Have a great
everyone.
rest of your night. Thank you.